Good day. This is Mandy from SOULFully SOIL. I just had this massive impulse to share with you all today. I'm sitting in the living room of my sister's house in Kelowna, BC, in the beautiful Okanagan. And it's a cooler spring than typically is had here. And I found that as well, leaving Monarch and Lethbridge, that it's been cooler and the buds on the trees are slow to show themselves, and the bees were slow to sort of come out and stretch their wings this spring. In comparison to other years, it's perfect for this growing season. But I just wanted to welcome you and really start to embrace the growing season. I've recently released the three-part series workshops that I'll be doing for the 2017 growing season here at SOULFully SOIL. This is my first year with a full expansion and a whole collection of ways to engage in the soil, both metaphorically and physically as well. And I was just doing a recording and conversation with myself really about what SOULFully SOIL is and what the invitation is for all of you to join me, and what makes it unique. What is this experience that's different than other experiences? I've been seeing online recently different permaculture sites, food forestry sites, edible forest garden sites, permaculture homesteading farms and spaces and families and all of these things, and seeing the unique expressions that each farm is. You can tell, you can read it in the words, you can feel the vibration in between each word and each syllable of how each farm and permaculturist describes themselves. And I've been really curious about what that is for me. I've done a number of recordings along this line in terms of the essence of who I am and the force that I am in this world, and I've not actually specifically done one in the expression of SOULFully SOIL. And that's what this recording is. I wanted to share some of that information with you going into the growing season. So my name is Mandy. I am a lover of soil. In any of the online profiles that you will see of me, I talk very specifically about that piece. I consider myself a steward of soil. And when I say soil, you'll often see it capitalized, SOIL. And what soil is for me and what it means for me and the expression that I am of soil is as sacred, organic, interconnected life. So both in a practical application and a physical form, when we look at the dirt, the brown stuff on the ground that I consider soil, we know that the health and the viability and the longevity and the nutrient availability and the biology in the soil is what is important. So it requires all of these connections and interconnections in life. So from the nematodes to the worms to the ladybugs to the birds to the chickens to the humans to all of the microbiology that we can't even begin to see in the soil. All of those connections and interconnections are essential to the health and longevity of our soils, especially as humans when we're considering that we're eating the product that comes from the soil. And when I consider all of the life and the interconnections that go into soil, I really see that as a metaphor for how I live my world and what the creation of our new world will look like. It will be based in and steeped in and fully evolving from the sense that we are all sacred, organic, interconnected life, and when we embrace those interconnections, we become more resilient, more strong. I always think of a spider web when I think of those things, and you can remove 2 or 3 or 4 strands of a spider web, but all of the interconnections that exist allow for that change and that fluctuation in the organic nature of a spider web. In the same way our food systems do, in the same way that our human systems should, in the same way our ecosystems, our forest systems, our edible forest gardening systems, our natural forest systems, whether it's a prairie or in a place like the mountains, they all require those multitude of connections and interconnections. And so that is how we make resilient systems. That is how we have sustainable food systems and human systems, is by encouraging and fostering that those diverse communities. And so when I think about soil, that's what I think about. So, I'm a mother, I'm a permaculture designer. I like to say I'm an intuitive permaculture designer. Permaculture design, permaculture specifically, is not just a it's not just a farming or gardening technique. It's been described many different ways by many different folks who engage this system. But for me, permaculture is not, it's a philosophy. It's a way to live our lives. It could be another metaphor for how we choose to build our human civilizations. Permaculture is, some people say it's permanent agriculture. So it's looking at our current food systems and saying, how can we design, connect and interconnect all of the pieces of this puzzle so that they are self-propagating or self-perpetual, so that they create perpetual growth. Culture is a really huge part of this. If we aren't interconnected as people, individually, in relation to one another, and we don't honor each individual as well as the whole, as well as all of those communities that develop, all those little pods of groups that we see, both in human systems and in plant systems and in tree systems, if we don't embrace that, encourage that, and foster that, then I think of our annual gardens, then it becomes this thing that requires work and energy and inputs, resources every single year, year after year after year, and we're always fighting uphill. Whereas when we embrace perennial and ongoing and multidimensional systems, then that becomes sustainable, that becomes regenerative, less human input is required. And so for me, permaculture is a set of principles and values that foster this way of being, that foster this way of creating community and gardening and farming systems and businesses. We can extend this into our entrepreneurship in how we redesign businesses and bank systems and school systems and medical systems. It isn't unique just to humans. It isn't just unique to farming and gardening. And so permaculture is a way that I choose to live. It's a whole system that is unique to me, and in the same way that it's unique to you. And so your expression of that will be different than mine, but we will somewhere in that spiral of creation connect. And so when I talk about intuitive permaculture design, it really comes from a place of just looking to nature to be my guide, looking to the existing systems that have survived for so long without human intervention. They've got something figured out, those plants and trees and biology in those natural ecosystems. And so looking to those ecosystems for my guide, spending time on the piece of land as a steward, not as an owner, not as a designer who's going to enforce a certain design on a specific space. And so I do intuitive permaculture design, which ends up being a really great collaboration between me and another. And I see my workshops this coming growing season as no different than that. It's an invitation to gather with folks who are keen to learn and know more about their food and how to grow it sustainably and more in alignment with our planet. And maybe you know absolutely nothing about gardening or farming, and maybe you know a whole lot. But what I bring to the table, and I guess this is the essence of what I wanted to flesh out for you all today, is what I bring to the table is a space, is a capacity, is a beautiful crucible for you to show up as your unique self and all the curiosities that you have, and allow all of us to come together and share the knowledge that we have. There will always be pieces of this that are shared with the participants in the workshop. This isn't I'm going to tell you all of these answers and they're going to be the only answers, because what I know about nature is what works in my space doesn't necessarily work in your space. But if you understand how the ecology works as a whole and the importance of each piece of biology and organic material that goes into an ecosystem, then you can take a step back in your own space, in your own gardens, in your own garden boxes, in your own food forests, on your own properties and acreages, and you can choose what feels right. So we will talk about some hands-on specific ways that can be achieved in different environments and different climates, but we will also talk about and empower each one of us to be able to know what that will be for our specific space and our specific soils and our specific ecology in our yards, in our gardens, on our farms. So I invite you all to check out my website at soulfullysoil.ca or my Facebook page, also Soulfully Soil, and have a look at the workshops and see what speaks to you. We're going to do a Women in Soil series, a 3-part series. We will do a Permaculture Meets My Annual Garden series, and we will do a herb and tea making, drying, and medicines 3-part series. So check it out, and I can't wait to see you in the soil.